Record. Great. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Tech Trek's first meeting. Today, we'll be talking about about different careers in tech, paths you could take. Hopefully, this will help you get a better idea of what you want to do with yourself if you're not a CS major or if you are, and just like show you the different options that you have to make sure you're finding a career that best suits you. So let's get started. So I'm Andrew. I am one of the leaders of Tech Treks along with Karina. I am a junior in CS at CAS. So graduating in a year and a half about. Over summer, I took a summer class also with Karina, who's algorithms. And then I started playing with Xcode, practiced some cooking. So I'm like mediocre, I would say. And I started watching The Office. So hopefully I can finish before it gets taken off Netflix. And here's my Cleanly link if anyone wants to talk to me outside of, like schedule like a chat outside of like regular meetings.
Hey guys, I'm Karina. I'm a sophomore studying CS, also at CAS. And over the summer, I took algorithms with Andrew. I launched a language app that I was working on with a couple friends to the App Store. And I tried to learn guitar, and I binged a bunch of Netflix. And my Calendly link is there if you would like to schedule a chat sometime.
Okay, so the first role we're going to talk about is software engineering. This is probably the most common title you'll see when you're applying to internships or full-time roles. It's pretty broad, and honestly, like it's not very helpful to just like search for software engineering. So typically when you're applying to these roles, you're going to want to look into the descriptions. So they'll usually specify like what kind of languages they expect you to use, because it could really vary. And by company, like your roles could be really different. So this is kind of like a broad, like general term. Like it's not, it's pretty easy to like look for these if you're just looking for like a general thing, but there's no, this isn't like a very specific role. So you can have different types of skills and still look for software engineering jobs, and their requirements might match you. CS degrees are not required for these positions. Like I know a couple of people from around the city who did not do CS at school. Like they majored. I know a guy who majored in chemical engineering at John Hopkins, and then he went and learned code on the side, just as like a hobby, and then he ended up going to Google, where he is now, which is pretty cool, I think. So software engineering is like just one of those things where you can do it later on if you just have like the passion for code, and just find something you want to do. Front end development is one of those more specific roles in software engineering. So this is typically within web apps, both front end and back end, which we'll also talk about. So front end is mostly with what you see as a user. So let's say if we go to google.com, you see like just like the blank page, it's like Google in the middle and with a search bar, like that's mostly built with front end. Like you place all things like in like a certain spot, so it looks good. And this is a very like designy type of role if you're interested in that. So languages you might want to use or learn for this are HTML, CSS, JavaScript. HTML and CSS are pretty easy to pick up. There are lots of tutorials online. W3 Schools is a really good resource. And then JavaScript is a lot harder to like fully understand, but I would say if you're willing to, this is definitely something you can learn, just like the basics of. But there's always like jokes about how people are releasing new libraries and like packages. So it does get pretty complex, but I think it's a fun language to learn. And here's backend development. This is also ties in with web app development. So basically, when you have the front end, you're just dealing with what you see, but backend is handling like what you put into it. So if I go to Google and I search up puppies, the term puppies gets passed through to the backend where they're going to look for puppies as like whatever they do, and then try to give you data back that can be displayed through the front end. So backend development is all like the nasty stuff. You don't want to see it because like no one's really going to understand it, but it helps make everything work. And languages you might want to learn: Java, C++, Python, C#, SQL. there's a lot of different languages for backend. It's pretty flexible. And yeah, I think it's just like one of those, it is specific for web apps. So if you're not into web development, this is probably not, um, this might not be like a role you want to apply for. So just be aware of that when you're applying to roles. Like if you don't want to work with web apps, probably don't apply to front end or back end. And then there's also the role called full stack developers, which you might see in applications. And full stack just means front and back end. So that means you're handling both the design and the data management in the back.
Yeah, so the main responsibility of product managers is to drive product vision. And what this means is they figure out what product that they want to build, who they're building it for, and why. And the skill set that they need to do all this combines business, technology, and working directly with customers. So on the business front, you would be determining which products to create by doing some market research or competitor analysis. And then when working with technology, you would be sitting down with your team and talking about the feasibility of different features and deadlines, and using that to create a product roadmap. And then when working with customers, product managers respond to user feedback to improve and iterate on their products. And there's many different paths you can take to PM roles. I think we'll be bringing on a speaker in the coming weeks to talk about her experience and her path to product management. And then UI UX designers work to create intuitive designs for products. So this involves doing user research to find pain points and developing user personas to emulate potential users, and creating wireframes, which basically are like prototypes of the product's UI and like user flows. And they can implement their own designs or pass them to the front end developers that Andrew was talking about earlier. And some popular tools for wireframing are like Figma, Origami, Sketch. So if any of you guys are interested in UI or UX, we have an event going on at the end of the month that teaches you how to use Figma. Yeah, so just as a quick overview of all the roles that we talked about, a UX designer works on user research, information design, and interaction design. A UI developer can also work on interaction design. There's a bit of an overlap between the roles sometimes. It kind of depends on the company you work for. Then also visual design and a bit of the front end. Front-end developers then take the designs and implement them, and they make calls to APIs that the back-end developers would create and develop.
Yeah, so if anyone has any questions about any of these roles, feel free to ask right now. One thing I'm going to say right now is a lot of the roles that we mentioned here, like the overlap, I think it's really beneficial if you do projects on your own, because then you'll basically be handling all these roles for yourself. So it's really good way to see like where do you fit in, or like how do you feel about certain things? Like, are you good at managing yourself? Are you good at, do you really enjoy making like the product look good, or like handling the data in the back? So I really recommend working on projects on your own, especially web apps or like iOS apps, Android apps, anything that does like the full stack, I guess, would be really comfortable and like good for you to learn more about yourself.
I guess I have a question. So, for people who like want to go into PM, do you know like what a good route that would be, or like what kind of, like, is it major specific, or like that?
So for PMs, I've seen some people go into like PM like directly. I know a few people who intern as PMs. over the summer, and they're also undergraduates. So I think PM is like, it's one of those things where you kind of have to understand the product and know a couple of things just about people, because the role is pretty broad. Like you're working with customers and stuff. So on our slide, we mentioned that MBAs are pretty common. Like that is kind of like the direct route. If you want to go straight from school, you go from MBA to PM. But also, it's pretty flexible if you go from just like a developer and you learn it enough. Developers usually go like junior, intermediate, and then like senior devs, and then you can go into PM if you want. Like the role fits you, then it's easy to like swap back and forth, I think. Okay, if no one else has any questions, then we'll move on to a feedback form. So we just want to ask like everybody about different their opinions on like the event times, and also in terms of like learning groups and the project groups. I know you got a lot of you guys said you were interested, so I want to make sure if you are interested and like do you have any suggestions for what kind of projects or languages you want to learn, that'll all be in the form, and also like the time of day or time of week, I guess, because we only had a couple people show up for this event, and we had a lot more people join going through the application form. So I want to make sure like we're not blocking too many people because the event is too early or on like a bad day. So if you can like fill out this form, I'll send it in chat too. That'd be really helpful, and we can try to organize our future events around this. I think that's right. Yeah, that's right. Okay, good.